Welcome to episode 11 of the WPCampus podcast, a podcast for those using WordPress in higher education. The campus web ecosystem is often very messy. You may have hundreds or even thousands of distinct web properties, and each one has its own history, its own personalities, and its own reasons why it's special and has to be different. Today, Jen and I are joined by one of our favorite clients here at NC State, Leslie Dare. Leslie is the Director of Technology Services for the Division of Academic and Student Affairs, which we'll be calling DASA, at NC State. And she spent 2015 and 2016 overcoming those hurdles and wrangling her unit into a centrally managed WordPress multi-site. Welcome, Leslie.
Hello.
So for everybody who's not from NC State, could you just describe DASA and what that means on campus and how many things fall under that umbrella?
That's a good way to put it, because there are a lot of things. So we are what a lot of people would consider an affairs unit, plus all the other random academic stuff that doesn't neatly fit into the colleges. So we have, all the typical student services like housing and student health, and programs like university recreation and leadership programs. And then on the academic side, we have the tutorial center and 5 different academic departments where you can't major, but you can minor. So that's why they landed with us. All told, we have about 60 departments, all with a wide variety of missions and purpose and goals and objectives. And so it is wrangling, for sure, is a really good word for it.
And so what was the web situation like a couple of years ago?
Well, so over the years, our division with all these different departments had as much variety as you could imagine in the departments. We had the same variety in our websites. And so we had units that had made a really good effort to identify someone to be the point person to do web stuff, and eventually even grew that into, in a couple of cases, someone with a skill set where they had a site that was not bad. I can't say that we really even had very many that were really very good, but we had some that were not bad. But at the other end of the spectrum, we had folks who had hired students who the students had great intentions, but they would build things that we couldn't sustain because they were trying to use every bell and whistle that they had learned how to code, whether we needed it or not. And then that student would graduate or get expelled or otherwise just go away, and we had no way to go through the back end and do anything. We had folks who had built websites outside of our domain, and so they lived in web space off campus. And we couldn't even get into the web hosting service. We had websites that had been built by who knows whom, but they were being maintained by staff who didn't either have the skill or the inclination or the time or the approval or the support of their supervisors to do that. And so it was a huge hodgepodge. We had many, many different platforms, just a few WordPress here and there. Just more recently, probably about 25 or 30 Drupal sites.
You were big into Drupal.
Yeah, that was one phase in
Right.
trying to get things cleaned up. But we still had a bunch of plain old HTML sites, a few PHP sites, and again, we had a couple of crazy homegrown content management system sites like that Trio site that someone else had built a homegrown CMS
You
for.
had some stuff that was way out there that we could not, that had to be brought in
Yeah.
carefully.
Yeah. So it was really varied. And so what we started with was all that variety. And as units would come and say, can you help with the site? I would do my best to do that. But it was clear even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that we needed to go in a direction where we could make it more sustainable. And so one of the big steps we took was to move sites that we could into Drupal. There was some central support out of Jen's shop for building Drupal sites, and with about 100 websites. I mean, that number varies. Sometimes it's like 94, 95, and then we go over 100. So I'll just call it 100 to make it nice and even. But out of those 100 sites, it seems like every year there's, some new ones or some 4 or 5 that need to be, drastically updated in some fashion, or so broken that we've got to do something and change it from scratch. So we did have an opportunity. We had about a 2-year period, I think, where we were able to take about 30 sites and push them into Drupal. And that was a huge improvement.
That's true, because if nothing else, it made it clear that you were an owner of that.
Right, that we had a vision.
And that you had a plan, right?
Yeah.
And that you were a place to come to get these problems resolved.
Right.
Even though at the time those were individual Drupal sites too that were still pretty distinct.
They were, and we weren't at all sticking to any sort of regular branding or anything. But just from the technical side of having sites that we knew that the right people could access them on the back end, and
it was getting updated.
Right. It was easy to update. It was a huge step for us, and so that that was getting us in the right direction. It also gave us the examples we needed for all the really bad sites. And again, bless their hearts, these are people who are doing the best they can, but we didn't have any resource at the center of the division to do this other than me. With these new Drupal sites, I was able to say, look what we can do for you. And so that sort of took on a life of its own. And so folks finally understood, if we need to do something with web, we'll go talk to Leslie and see what there is. So I didn't have to go out and beg people to let me help them come up with a new plan. They started coming to me, which was helpful.
So where did the decision get made to go in the managed WordPress direction?
Well, the next thing that happened,
how long was Jen begging you to do that?
Well, it was interesting because there were, Jen and Nick, 2 folks in central IT, who were on similar parallel paths of developing, a content management environment for campus. One of them was Drupal and one was WordPress. And I jumped on the WordPress bandwagon just because it was maybe
you jumped on the Drupal bandwagon.
I'm sorry, the Drupal bandwagon, because it was like maybe 6 months ahead of the WordPress.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate for some new websites that, that was what was there truly in the moment. And so that's where we went. So meanwhile, while I'm pulling all these sites into Drupal, Jen's moving forward with putting, WordPress together in a way that we could really use. In fact, I dipped my toe in it when we first developed our blogs website.
Right.
So we had a need, in addition for departmental websites, 100-ish of those, we had a need for blogs. A number of units have student programs where they want the students to, talk about their experience in the program, whether it was alternative service break trip or, being a chancellor's liaison or, a university scholar or whatever. And so we needed these blog sites. And so Jen said, hey, we could do a WordPress multi-site for your blogs. And that was our first step.
And that's still there.
And that's still there. And we still use it.
Right. Distinct from the rest of your stuff.
It is. It's like this separate thing. And so that's where I started understanding the beauty of the multi-site environment. But it didn't really occur to me at the time that might be the big time solution. And I don't know that the infrastructure was quite there yet anyway.
No, to give the people who are listening a little background into what NC State went through. I, as Leslie said, was half of the team, and I worked on WordPress, and my colleague Nick Young, who's now at UNCG in Greensboro, was the other half, and he did Drupal. And then at some point, Nick left, got this job at UNCG, and for even actually a year after that, they tried to keep Drupal running as a separate and distinct group, which was a little frustrating for me because I could see right away that we needed to consolidate on one product just for the purposes of support and getting themes built and trying consistency. And there's a million reasons to just have one product. And so in the end, we finally were able to make that happen. And that's where we got to this point. But that did mean, of course, for Leslie, that she was one of our clients who then we had to work on moving out of the Drupal environment. Right. But fortunately, you were ready for that.
We were ready for that. Well, and so, it was interesting timing because Nick left and it was clear that, really WordPress was going to be more sustainable
And everyone on
general.
campus on NC
Yeah.
State's campus
Right.
really started to move in that direction.
Right.
around that time.
The other shops who were doing web stuff in a serious way started putting resources towards that. So, so at the same time that we started having this shift on campus towards WordPress, my division finally hired a director of marketing communications, and that was the secret sauce for us.
Yeah.
Because I could talk until I was blue in the face about needing to find some resources and marshal them into a strategic plan of getting all of our websites updated and all that. But I couldn't talk about it from a communication standpoint nearly as well as this person who does that for a living, right?
Right.
And so between us, we were able to partner, and we put together a strategic plan for our division websites that laid out, these are the reasons why we have to do something different than what we're doing now. We didn't even talk about the solution. We just talked about, this is what we need to have. We have to have sites that are on brand. They have to, the content has to be accurate, which means they have to be easy to update. The sites have to be secure. And at that point, we'd already had a few breaches into some of our websites because we weren't updating the back end as frequently as we should have. They needed to be, accessible. So there were both sort of functional / communication reasons that we needed to have this new master plan. And then on the back end, we needed the technical support reasons that were part of it as well. And so, he came in and was horrified at the state of our websites. And I was a little bit hanging my head because I was responsible for all that. But at the same time, it was like, it could be way worse than it used to be. and we actually made progress. Trust me, we have made progress. So once he and I figured out that, we had a set of goals and objectives, there was one other piece to it that he wanted to do that I couldn't envision technically, which was, what does he call it? A river of news. The river of news that would have all these little side streams and
he had a big vision for communications, which is his job.
Right.
This is Justin is the person that got hired. So
Justin Hammond. And so, as I described the division earlier, we've got, these 60 disparate units. They're actually some commonalities. Of course, we have, a whole set of groups who work in the area of wellness and others who work with campus programs and leadership. And so we had sort of these buckets, for lack of a better term, of sort of functional groupings. And Justin's vision was that, that any of the news coming out of university recreation could also be fed to, say, the student health services website, because both of those are sort of in the wellness area, or the health and exercise studies website, and that they could feed each other's news off of each other's sites. And that all sounded great. And then at the end of the day, we could also feed all of that to the main DASA site, and then we could have subsets of those feeds. And so in talking through it a little bit more with Jen, I think we finally decided we could do this with WordPress multi-site. And we needed to anyway. We needed to move to WordPress because that was going to be the platform for campus,
right,
the one that you all could support and provide the back-end infrastructure that we needed.
We also had branding things going on at that point because
Right.
the new campus brand had just rolled out.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's
Yeah.
a little bit of a club to get people on board.
Yeah, it was. And
you guys were really one of the first on campus to grab that brand and make it your own in a distinct way.
yeah.
And really push it out. So you were a great model for campus.
Well, I'm glad we were. I mean, it was a little scary because we were trying to get buy-in. We had a lot of units who were really nervous about this whole notion of not having a super unique website. They weren't even nervous that much about a new platform and all that. I mean, we had a few folks who were, kind of fed up with yet another way to do websites, but more was about, I really like the way my website looks, and, convincing them that you get more out of being branded than you do trying to be unique the way that you think you are. And that's why we have Justin, who's the professional and who knows this stuff. So, so we're doing all this PR work to sell the idea, and also how easy, and I'm going to do air quotes now, easy it is to manage a site like this, and all things considered, it really is. But being able to convince folks of that when we didn't really have a good example to point to yet was really challenging. But the branding piece, brand new refresh of the university brand comes out about the same time. So the process was basically, we hired a design firm to do the mock-ups for us of how we wanted to all look and feel. And they, we gave them the instruction of the general idea of what we wanted. We basically said, make it sort of look like the NC State homepage, which is a good start. And then stay on brand, and here's some other aspects from a sort of communication standpoint that we want. So they came back, and that was really a quick process. Once we had them on board, we had to go through the usual university process of approvals and all of that, and including our central communications team and whatnot. But once we sat down with them and said, this is what we need, we had the final product back from them probably about 3 or 4 months, and Jen was part of that, sat in on some of those meetings.
Yeah, so my recollection is that the review took a little while. I think the official brand update was released in October or November of that year.
Yeah.
And then I think your new designs were approved after the back and forth in around December, because
that sounds right.
I hit the ground running with that in the new year, and we launched the first couple sites at the end of February.
That's right. That's right.
So there were a couple of things about that. So we did the main DASA theme for you guys, and the key there too was a couple of different templates that you could use. Mm-hmm. So I know we talked about this, and we pushed away from using ACF we knew that you were going to have a lot of people that needed some customization, but we just managed that through internal theme customizations. Mm-hmm. And we stayed away from ACF really, because we didn't want to jump into that with both feet. We wanted to make it easy to move out of there eventually. Mm-hmm. And we felt like there could be better ways of doing it, and that would make it more flexible in the long term. And I think it has. I still, sometimes wonder if ACF might have been easier in some ways. But I think you have most of the stuff that you need. So
yeah, I think we do. And, the other thing is we had to kind of scale back our ideal dream world a little bit, because it was such a massive project. I mean, and I'm sure there are, companies or other institutions or whoever out there who are dealing with multiple hundreds of sites where they're having to deal with this. But for us, being the 2 people, and both of us are like director level people who typically aren't supposed to be working in the day-to-day, getting into the settings and the back end and doing the training and all that. But yet that's who was doing it, the 2 of us who have all these other responsibilities. And so we had to scale back everything that we really wanted you to do, partly because we just had to get it done.
Right.
And so we just did it's not exactly what we want, or it's not meeting everything on everyone's lists.
But you couldn't. We couldn't with that many people. And
that's right.
At some point, for consistency, you had to say, look, guys, it's going to be this way.
Exactly.
Which is something that for our campus is really hard to say. Yeah. We have, most of our clients won't say that. And this is how we wind up with a hodgepodge of 60 different sites.
It is. It is.
So it was really fun to work with you. Great to work with you, because it's so nice when that happens. Uh-huh. But yeah, I remember we tried to have a bunch of different templates for you guys, so that you had like a landing page, but you also had secondary sort of landing pages. Mm-hmm. And there were, some other different options there. And then we also wound up with, aside from the main DASA site, we had a DASA child theme for all of your units.
Right.
And then an arts theme.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because arts is unique.
Right.
And in the end, we're not using arts anymore.
Right.
We brought them back into the fold, which is very exciting, at least for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing, because it's, I guess, this was February of 2015.
Yeah.
It's like a year and a half ago now.
It is.
We've come a long way.
Yeah. We went live with the main DASA site.
In February.
In February.
When did we finish the last of all the other DASA sites? Was like October or so, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was we spent the summer live with that. Justin and I, at that point, were meeting with every single department.
Right. Training everybody.
Well, yeah. Well, first it was just letting them know this is what's going to happen, and then talking them off the ledge of, it's going to be all right that you have a site that's not completely unique. But then we held something like 15 training sessions And we gave everybody admin access, because they had to have it to build their sites. But I remember one very long weekend where I had to prep every site, because we had all the training sessions, the first round of them, like in 1 week.
Right.
And so
I remember that too.
yeah, you were there, and we had to have all the sites prepped with the things that we knew that we needed all the sites to have a certain menu,
the about page and that menu. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, it was, this crazy, flourish of activity trying to get each site prepped. And I finally figured out, we had a clone site. And all of this, 3 of those sites are not live sites. They're just meta sites, really.
Right, that are for duplication for various scenarios.
So one of them's our clone.dasa site. And that's the one, I make that one look the way that we want them all to look, or at least at the base. It's sort of our template. And so if I need a new site, I'll write you guys and say, please make whatever.dasa off of the clone site. And it has the basic posts with our categories and tags and menus and all that's ready to go, and which is a wonderful thing. And then we have a test.dasa site where we just do crazy stuff. And then we have a sample.dasa site to show off. And so sometimes we'll go in and prep it a certain way if we're doing a demonstration or training or something, or we give somebody access to it so they can play around with it. But I finally figured out how to, take the clone site and export all the pages and posts and categories and tags and all that and upload them into the new site, and then delete the tests that created the tags, all that kind of stuff. But it was well worth it because folks came in and we had a very well documented training for them.
And that was another thing. I mean, your training was completely fantastic, and the fact that you've continued to have, you have open office hours, the same that we do, but for your own people, for your own web stuff. And then you also have really good documentation on the back end in the dashboard for all the sites. Which I think has been huge because, again, since you guys have a much more constructive, stricter, and I'm not even sure I would call it strict, but a actual structure to your...
Right, yeah, you're training people on multiple things at once. You're training them on, this is WordPress and how it works. You're training them on, this is your support structure and who you can go to, and you're training them on, these are our conventions. These
here's our editorial style.
Here's all the things you're expected to do.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You all have about pages on every site.
We do.
You have tags and categories worked in a unique
consistent
way. Right.
And we, it's like we told people you have to put your phone numbers with dots instead of dashes.
Right.
I mean, even down to that level, which, for Justin's purposes, this also allowed him to start educating people about, like you say, brand and editorial style and all of that as well. And, we still have, it takes a lot to constantly monitor those sites to make sure everybody's still staying in compliance.
But I'm telling you, you have to be one of the very few on campus that have anything like that kind of consistency throughout your department. I mean, I'm not even sure I can think of an knowledge.
Let's not even look at the Office of Information Technology. That's ours.
We should not look at our stuff, yes.
Right. Well, and so we hope to, moving forward, we spent a lot of time getting us to that point, and, once all sites had been moved and we were out of Drupal and we had no more sites sitting in just some, random, AFS space, or an off-campus domain or whatever. That was like, okay, celebration.
I was done. I remember that party.
Yeah. And then we put together, like you say, the regular drop-in help sessions. And then we also put together a wish list, where just a spreadsheet where people could go and say, I really wish we had this. And of course, some of those were really help requests, which we would then put in our ticketing system. But, folks would come back and say, I really wish we had a way to display like a timeline, or, if we could add, Pinterest to our social media icons and that kind of thing. And so Justin and I constantly monitor that. And then we meet with Jen, probably every couple of months or so. We sit down and go through that list and,
say, this is totally feasible. I'll have this done for you, in a week or two or something.
Right.
And then
this is alternatively, this is crazy talk.
That's right.
This is a problem with the way that we're doing things.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's good because sometimes Justin and I are not sure, is this request something that we could really leverage for all the sites? And we have to go in and balance it out of, it would only serve 2 or 3 sites.
Right.
And how much of your time would that take, and what are the other needs? So we end up doing this whole prioritization process, which is valuable.
And we appreciate.
Good. Well, the other thing is we can go back then to the departments and say, you asked for these things, and in the spreadsheet we try to show the status, but we're able to tell them we have made progress. Here are the things that you've asked for in the last 6 months that we've been able to implement. And that's been the other thing, is educating all these folks that we're never really done, of course.
Right.
And we constantly have to meet with them and talk about major changes that are coming through and whatnot. But that's just part of the process. I think that really the key for us, the reason that we were able to make this work, I think, is that we were able to successfully pair and partner between the technical side and the functional side.
Mm-hmm.
And between us, we were able to make a good case, not only to the folks in the trenches who had responsibility for all these sites, but to our leadership team, where when we did get pushback, leadership was able to back us up.
Yeah.
Because we had mapped that out.
There's a really powerful triangle there, and I'm not sure that it's successful without all 3 pieces, and that's probably even within the OIT site. I'm going to get us in trouble here, but I mean, we have a technical solution, but we are still working on that enforcement piece and on those good editorial styles and standards piece, and
getting leadership. I don't think our leadership doesn't disagree with us, but they don't prioritize it.
Right.
And that's a big key.
And I mean, it's hard to find that really in a lot of places, I think, and especially with NC State being so decentralized, and then counting on that to happen for every single unit is kind of a pipe dream.
Right.
And I'm sure we're not the only people having this problem.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Well, we can, even though Justin and I have all these grand schemes and everything, we're doing our best to stay within the framework that we've developed. It's still challenging. Number one, we still don't have the resources that we need on our end. I mean, I'm able to conjure up the budget that I need to contract with Central IT, your group, Jen, both of you, to, have the support we need to do special things like, our housing unit needed a more sophisticated way to search on multiple parameters for different aspects of residence halls.
Mm-hmm.
And you all were able to write us a nice plug-in for that we think later on might be useful in some other sites. And so, you all wrote us a plug-in to display building hours, which we got a bunch of units who are excited about that. So, that's been really great. So us having the budget to be able to, have that annual contract with you to manage not only the back-end server when we blow it up with
major news event,
some event that's killing the site, but aside from that, we don't have the human resources that we need on my end to do what we need to do. And at some point, that's we've talked about the option of us just continuing to contract with you for that aspect as well. But I think our long-term goal is, certainly managing 100 websites. One would think that could be a full-time job.
Yeah. Especially if you keep adding stuff there.
Well, right.
And adding more projects.
Exactly. And so we're hoping to take a position that we're in the process of trying to get created, an application developer position, that person would also have some skill and capacity to take on some of the basic stuff, the things that like I'm doing every day. Every day I probably deal with, a handful of requests like we need to show this new calendar on this page, or I can't figure out how to add this to my menus, that kind of stuff. It's
sure.
Simple, basic stuff, but if you went through the training once and then didn't have to mess with it for another year, you're not going to remember how you do that. And so we have enough volume of help requests that, we need to put the resources to that. So all of that to say, part of the plan that Justin and I had with this entire scheme of having a strategic plan for websites did include the fact that we would need resources to do this. And there's just so many competing priorities at the high level for DASA. Even in my own shop, I would consider this a technical position that comes out of my shop and not, a communication position. And that's splitting hairs at this point. But, I have other needs too, not just for supporting websites, but,
you're all
security
all
and
DASA technical services.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then, do we collect from the departments to try to get them to help us support it? So we need more resources with that. Makes a big difference. And then having you all, help run interference where we need you to has been the other big thing that's helpful, because, it's not, NC State's such a big organization, and it's not always clear what direction we're going as a campus with some things, and then interpreting the latest direction we're getting from our central university communications group about branding or what we're supposed to be doing with websites, or, we have a new campaign coming up, and all websites at the university are supposed to put this little campaign icon on our website, and that's just not an easy thing to do, is it?
We'll see.
We'll see. So, the list never ends. And then, like in my group, I mean, since we got them all done, I think we've added 10 websites.
Oh yeah. And then, on top of that, you have other projects. Arts has changed some, and
That's
might
right.
continue to change. And
Yeah.
they are, we should mention, in their own multi-site, because again, they're flowers. So they have a different environment, but otherwise you have 70 sites in your DASA multi-site environment.
Right.
And then it's at 7 or 9 in the arts environment.
Right.
And then still a bunch in blogs.
A
hanging
bunch
out
of
there by
blogs.
themselves.
And then we got a whole bunch of standalones,
You do still
some
have
student organization type websites.
a handful of those.
Yeah. So,
But you're still down from 100 and some
yeah.
standalone. Who knows where they come from?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're all in WordPress, and they're
Yeah.
all using the DASA theme.
Yeah,
They're all branded.
Right. We have roughly 70 in one multi-site instance.
Right.
And that's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you all come up with, we come to you and say, we need something to be able to easily manage showing building or location hours. Boom, there's a plugin, and we can put it on any site we want. I mean, you got to go in and touch it and activate it and play with the settings and stuff, but I'm not having to recreate the wheel 70 times.
Right.
So it's a wonderful thing.
Well, and we should mention too that we're a year and a half from launch, a year since everybody's been in there, basically. Right. And so now we're moving into a phase where, the brand has morphed.
Mm-hmm.
Not significantly, but in a way, in small ways over the last year and a half, so that what was approved as a design 2 years ago, basically back in December, isn't quite the same as what's out there now. So we're even working on a slight update to the DASA theme to sort of bring it in line with how sites on campus are sort of branded now. Just small differences like titles and where links are, and
centering the page title.
Right. Just small little weird things like that matter.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, we've had, I probably met with 3 different groups on campus who came to us saying, we like what you all did with your multi-site. Well, they didn't even know if we were doing multi-site. They basically knew that we had revamped everything and wanted to learn how we did that. And, so we sent you a whole bunch of new customers as a byproduct of that. But in that year and a half, some other groups have followed the same path, just a little bit behind us. But now they're doing some things that we're looking at, and we see,
ooh, I want that.
Yeah. Yeah, and our departments are seeing that too.
And the cycle continues, and we get paid.
That's right.
just keep doing that.
Exactly. And then, you're going to build something for us that they're going to come back and say, oh, we want that.
Yeah.
So,
But it's interesting that it is an iterative process. And it is nice that you can do that, with WordPress, that we can, make some changes, like correct the way the nav works, which is going to be a pretty major change, but on the front end should be pretty seamless.
And when you roll it out for everybody.
Right. And it's one big hit, and everybody gets working at the same time. So there's a lot of benefits to that.
I think that the WordPress multi-site platform as a solution for us has allowed us to change the culture. I mean, that was the title of our presentation last year, wasn't it? Changing the web culture 100 sites at a time. But, thinking it's been a year ago since I've really thought about that presentation, but that same word comes back to mind tonight, which is we were facing a lot of pushback about these changes because folks wanted their own unique look and feel. They thought that that's what they needed. And they were worried about, who all else was going to be touching their site and that kind of thing. And so the WordPress platform, in particular the multi-site platform, has allowed us to streamline the technical back end enough that it has made real believers out of the end users who now get that it's so much easier to manage their site. And so we came through. We told them it will be easier, and yep, sure enough,
on the other side, it was true.
It was true, right? And so they have a level of confidence in us when we come back and say, we're going to make this change, or we need to go in a different direction. So, and then on the flip side, and this part isn't my area of responsibility, but it's a joint responsibility anybody in technology has, which is, we're the required element for the communications people to do their work. And, and especially in a lot of groups, sometimes that communication responsibility falls to the technical group when there's not a dedicated professional or other group of people. And so, because we were able to deliver the right technical solution, we were able to change the culture about communication. And so that's been a big win for Justin. And he has folks thinking about what's on brand and what's not, and actually asking questions before they pull the trigger on something.
Which is fantastic. And that is the goal for central communications.
Exactly.
So it's great when technology can enable things to be done right.
Mm-hmm.
I do think you mentioned, it changed your culture, but I actually think that you're very right that other people on campus took notice of what DASA did, and you really have changed the culture for web on campus. Because I would say a year and a half, 2 years ago, there were a lot of people on campus who were very afraid of losing that distinct look.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't hear that as much. We're much more likely to hear, from people who really, they just want to be on brand. They just want to do it right.
Right.
And we want to help them be that. Right. So
if anything, they're saying, like, how can we make our banner look different than everybody else's banner?
Potentially,
but it's a much smaller fight than we want a black background instead of a white background.
Right. So finding new ways to be creative within the brand is where we have people working with, and that. It's easy to look back and see how far we've come, but I'm not sure that I have in the last little while here. It's like, that's definitely an improvement.
It is. Well, we were one of the big groups of folks who definitely had violated the rule about, the use of university images in logos. And
oh yeah, you guys had a lot of logos, and I designed a lot of them for you. Yeah,
and that was a real pain point too, was telling people with the new website, you have no department logos, and luckily we had the hammer of the brand refresh behind us on that, so that helped. And all things considered, it worked. Timing was great, but it was also just really good vision and partnerships, I think, between your all's group, the tech group in DASA, the communications group in DASA, I didn't think that we couldn't pull it off, but I was nervous about it. And now I have no doubt that, whatever next is coming around the bend, it'll be fine. It will
Way
be
to jinx
fine.
us.
That's
Somebody
right.
knock on wood. Jeez.
You guys are looking at me like I'm supposed to say something.
Yeah.
All right, so
I've waxed eloquent for as long as I can at this point without some sort of prompt. So.
Yeah, we've said all the awesome things we can say.
Used all of our buzzwords.
Mark those off.
Right.
So you've still got a lot of the same users that you had pre-WordPress multi-site.
Very much so.
And a lot of them were used to doing their own sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And, now maybe they're asking for permission, or they're asking, how can we do this? But I've got to think you still have people sort of trying to sneak something around you.
Oh, yeah.
So, So how do you I guess constructively engage with those people, or do you constructively engage with them?
That's a really I'm glad you brought that up. We actually have a couple of sites right now where that's exactly the case, and these are instances where we have staff in the departments whose job it actually is to manage the website. And they've got a little bit more of a skill set than, your office manager or the assistant director for the, leadership program or whatever, who are not trained in this. Whereas in these two cases, these folks,
they get bored.
They get bored. We're also sort of easing the pain of the transition. So in 2 or 3 instances, partly to ease the pain of transition and partly to get it done because we were trying to get everything moved. We allowed some folks to color outside of the lines for a little bit. And so Justin and I have been having that conversation about, okay, now how do we walk them back from that? And there's some resistance there because, I mean, you know, if you think about it, we're taking away part of their job responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not their job to write, you know, CSS anymore. And, you know, that's difficult. So it's a series of conversations, but it comes back down to saying at the end of the day, yes, you know, we did turn on that JavaScript toolbox, or what's that? Was that the one that
something?
was
Yeah, that sounds right.
so that you can throw in some extra code of your own because you want this page and this table layout to be different. And we get that. And there's a lot of ownership to how the page looks and feels because that was their job before. But now we're ready to say, we know you like the way that looks, but it's not necessarily any better or worse than what we have. And we need it to be consistent.
Right.
And so we're going to have to get rid of these customizations. So our plan is to work with those individuals directly, engage leadership where we have to in those departments to talk about that. And, you know, I mean, it'll all be fine. I don't think we're going to have, you know, to break bad on anybody or anything like that.
Call us if you do.
I'll just go in and delete the code and we'll see what happens, right? But, you know, I try to be cognizant of that, you know, this is people's work that we're saying you can't do this anymore, or this is your creativity, you know, that I'm turning off. You can't be creative anymore.
Right.
You
can put into the blogs environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do have some other options there, and that's, you know, on us too. We have to find other ways to make sure folks feel like that they are expressing the function of the unit in a way in the online environment that works for them, even at the end of the day, after they've gotten all the best advice that they can from Justin and other communication professionals, that you know, at the end of the day, they have to make the right decision. And if it's within, you know, the lines of the coloring book, you know, hey, that's great. But we have some folks coloring outside the lines that we've got to get the eraser and take care of that. So I'm not looking forward to that, but we're actively
working on it. It's been a long time
on it.
coming. You've been really patient with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're hoping that by January we'll have those cleaned up. And, you know, the nice thing is, you know, over time you stick around long enough, things change, people change, positions change, and, you know, you get a whole new group of people in, and to them it's just the only way to do things. Well, of course we're going to do it that way.
Yeah.
You know, so, but, you know, I'm always reminded, and this has been at least 10 years ago, but I had someone in a department who told me that she had gone to an HTML, week-long HTML class. Now, this is someone who's the office manager for a department. This is not, the website's not in her job description. She had no other formal training, but she took it upon herself to go to get this training, which showed a lot of initiative. She was really making a best effort to do it right. And actually, I'm remembering her wrong. She hadn't gone yet, but she was telling me, I've signed up, I'm going next week. It's however many days. And I was wanting to go ahead and schedule some time with you, Leslie, so that when I get back, you can help me review all of it and understand whatever I didn't pick up.
Whoa.
And all of this because she wanted to, like, I don't know, add a form to a page or something.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, I tell you what, tell me what you need. There are times when you teach people to fish, and then there are times you just give them the fish.
Just tell me, what kind of fish you want.
Exactly. And so let me give you the fish. But it was hard because there was a limit to how much time I could give to do all these things that people wanted to do. So on one hand, I'm telling them that's not a good use of your time. You're going to learn all this stuff that you don't really need and can't put to good use, you know, and I can do that for you, but then I get busy with other things and I can't deliver. And so it's hard for me to, you know, live up to my end of the deal. Now what we have is an environment where they can take, you know, they want a form. They might need some 10 minutes of help to show them, oh yeah, that's over here in the dashboard. Click on this and just click on these things and you're good to go. They can come to our drop-in help for that or send an email, and we send them on their way and they're happy campers. It's just, the world is a much better place now.
And your drop-in help, that's your office hours, right?
Right. Well, so we have I stole the idea from you all. So you all host Friday co-working for web co-working. Is that what you call it?
In office hours, yeah.
And you all have had that for a number of years. And so back in 2015, when we were launching all these websites, even though Justin and I were having all these training sessions, we knew people would immediately need help.
Yeah.
And there was just no way to try to fit that in easily into our schedules or anything. And I said, let's do co-working. And so we started our own co-working. Now we label ours as just DASA co-working. And we have people come, and it's not anything to do with websites.
Sure.
And we're pitching it as just time in the division to come and hang out and work on your stuff, whatever that might be. And we have other people from the division who provide service who are there, who can help people with assessment or HR questions, or, how do I run this budget report? But they can also get help on their WordPress site.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was extremely popular that summer, because we did it I think every Friday for the whole summer.
Right, when everybody was getting moved.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they really took advantage of that. And then now we still do co-working, but it's like every 3 weeks or so. And in fact, I haven't told Justin yet that I won't be there for Friday.
Surprise.
Surprise. But that continues to be a place. I mean, it's been wonderful, from somebody who says, we need to know how to do this thing. And, I don't have the time to set up an hour to sit down with them,
right,
or go to their office, or even carve out the time for them to come to me.
Instructions.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can just say, come to co-work. If it's something that can wait a few weeks,
mm-hmm,
come to co-working. We'll show you in person. It'll take us 20 minutes,
right,
and it'll be great.
Yeah.
So that's been a wonderful piece of our support plan.
Yeah, we're fond of it too.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Well, in fact, I just learned a couple of people have been going to yours.
That are DASA people,
Yeah,
in fact. Yeah.
So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we're doing pretty well on time. We've been talking for a while. What comes next? So I guess in a year and in 5 years, let's say, where do you see all this going?
Well, so one big change that I'm hoping is in place in the coming year is us having our own internal dedicated support, at least a part of a position, if it's not a full position. But I could see it being a full-time position long-term. And so we've got to have that in place at some level. I just don't know how we continue doing it the way we've been doing it for Justin and I. But, convincing leadership that they've got to invest in this. And that's always the challenge, right? That's why we get paid the medium bucks. So, but then after that, is WordPress here forever? I don't know.
I keep waiting for the next big thing, because that's how it works, right? In IT, that's the next big thing. And so far, I've been really happy with how WordPress and the development behind it has
growing with people's needs.
Right, has built the next big thing into WordPress, so that it's doing a lot of the things that web should be, that it's building, newer JavaScript libraries in, and that it's doing more things with shortcodes, or hopefully we'll be doing more things with short. Not going off the rails. It's still updatable, mm-hmm, you can walk it back if you need to.
Well, and I could see 5 years from now, I could easily see, and you all know better than I do, but from my perspective, it seems like WordPress could easily still be here in 5 years, and the solution that we're still using. It's the fact that it's open source is a huge win for us.
Yep.
I know eventually, it's hard to keep people working in state government. For the, all the competition that's out there, where people can make better money. So we have really dedicated folks who end up staying in higher ed for a long term. But, you do get turnover. You get people who leave. And I feel much more confident that, if you all get turnover in your all shop, you can hire someone with some WordPress skills, because.
Right. The fact that it's so popular means that hopefully we can find staff that know what's going on with it. And to my mind, even that once we do figure out what the next big thing is, I don't think we're likely to jump ship into something that is mediocre, or that hasn't been established.
Right.
And that, because WordPress is so popular, whatever else comes along that's next, I feel like there should be a pretty solid platform for moving to it.
Right.
Because WordPress has always been good about getting content out of it, and I feel like anything else that's decent that people are that we would look at moving into would have some sort of process for moving things. So yeah, I feel.
Or maybe the next big thing is something that lives alongside WordPress, you know?
Right. Yeah. Some other solution like that. Sure.
Exactly. And so, you know, the other thing is because the tool of WordPress, and in particular multi-site, has allowed us to get to this point, it's going to be relatively easy from this point forward. I mean, if the next big thing is GenPress, you know, and we have to migrate to that. Well, I've already got everybody corralled into this one platform.
Did you just name something after me?
I did.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yeah, Jen, use all that free time you have.
That's right.
Write up a new product.
Someone quick claim at genpress.org, right? But, you know, I don't have to corral all those cats, right? I've already got them in the pen.
Right.
And, you know, I can pick them up and move them over to a new platform in a much easier fashion at this point. So, you know, the notion of a major change doesn't really worry me at all. I mean, I think WordPress is great, and if it's still around, that's fabulous. But if for some reason it's not, I, you know, am not daunted by that the way that I was, you know, 2 years ago when we were talking about, can we really do this? It was one of the, I mean, aside from our Google project on campus, this is probably one of the biggest technical projects I'd ever worked on. And, you know, Justin and I had staked a lot on our reputations on this, saying, people, we got to do this, and this is the way, and you got to trust us, and we made it work. It was beautiful.
So proud of you guys.
Thank you. Well, I'm proud of you all. We made it happen.
I'm excited we got to do it.
Yes, high five, baby. That's right. And we went bowling. That's true.
It's a good way to celebrate.
It is.
We had a few beers too.
There was
that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking with us. I guess I'll read my exit notes here. The 2017 WP Campus hosting application is open until October 28th. So if you want your campus to be a WP Campus next year and host the conference, you need to go to WPCampus.org and get that started now. For even more WordPress and higher ed, more and more WordCamps are starting to have higher ed tracks. So hopefully look forward to that in 2017 as well.
And WP Campus people will be at High Ed Web. I don't know if that's in your notes, but that's about a week and a half away.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's coming up.
So I'll be there, so people can follow me on Twitter, or we'll post stuff in Slack.
And depending on when this is posted, it may already be announced, but there's a big WP Campus thing that's going to be announced soon. So circle your calendars for January 23rd, 2017. Block off that time and be close to your computer, and stay tuned for details. I think that's basically what Rachel said. So
that is what she said.
All right. As always, you can follow us at WPCampus.org on Twitter for news and updates about this podcast, the WP Campus community, and anything else WordPress and higher ed. If you have a suggestion for this podcast, you can tweet at WPCampus.org. You can tweet at Brian DeConinck if you can figure out how to spell that. You can tweet at
NCSU Merit.
NCSU Merit. And in general, tell us what you want to hear about. Other than that,
because otherwise we'll just have to keep talking to our clients.
Yeah,
nobody wants that.
And I'm not coming back for one more year.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for another update.
Thanks, Melissa.
You bet.